the God of Israel had a geographical boundary? That's the question that my guy here is asking about. He's saying that now that he knows that this God, this Hebrew God, had a geographical boundary, meaning that he was assigned it. This is partly, if I'm understanding him correctly, coming from the teachings of the Sumerians, where at a certain point in time, Anu decided that he was tired of all the other Anunnaki and fighting over different people in different territories and different areas. And so he instituted a program where each individual Anunnaki and Samigigi were given certain areas to be the god of that area. Now, that was something from the Sumerians that got passed down to the Akkadians, the Assyrians, into the Canaanites, and so on and so forth, because the Hebrew come out of the Canaanite and the Sumerians teachings. And the reason why I give them the Canaanites, because Yahweh was a Canaanite god before it was a Hebrew god. Now, these gods had different territories, and when you go back and look at what we have found archaeologically about these different tribal groups, what we see is that each group were henotheistic, believing in their god existed as well as other gods existed, the gods of the other people. This is why Yahweh has a fight with the god Shamash, to which he loses. But meaning that Yahweh lost to Shamash. But each one of these gods were given their own people. And even in the Sumerian story, Abram was chosen by Enlil because he still worshipped the old ways of the Sumerians and coming out of the city of Ur, which was a Sumerian town, and he was supposedly chosen by Enlil to be the god of what would become the Hebrew people and then later on the Israelite people. They all had their areas. This is like Elnana had the Indus Valley area. Marduk had the Babylonians and then later had the Egyptian area and changed its name to Ra. So each one of these deities had their own areas. Now, did this become part of why the Hebrew people walked around the Sinai Peninsula for 40 years? I have to say no. And the reason why I have to say no is because there is absolutely no proof that these people actually existed during that time frame and accomplished what they claimed that they accomplished. This is all based on just writings that Hezekiah, Josiah, and Ezra put together between the 700 BCE and 500 BCE. And we see that they added stories from many different traditions. We do have the people of the Akhten in the 1400 BCEs, around 1440 BCE, when they were kicked out of Egypt, that they wandered into the Sinai Peninsula area, then eventually into the Levant. The same with the Shashu. And then after the Bronze Age collapse, the Canaanites wandered into the highlands of the Levant area as well. So the idea of wanderers is not an uncommon teaching. We even have an Egyptian stone that tells of the people the wanderers who worship Yahweh, the nomadic people. Actually, it says the nomadic people who worship this God Yahweh. It did not necessarily specify the name of the group, but said that they were nomadic people. And we have at least 3, possibly 4, if you include the Hyksos, after they were expelled out of Egypt, to be nomadic people wandering around the Levant. And because of the collapse of society during the Bronze Age, after the Bronze Age, then we have many people who were trying to re-establish their civilizations in this Levant area. And so there was possibly, more than likely, a huge mixture of understandings and teachings that all came together to form a new people. And that new people, one of those new people, becomes your Israelite people who are mentioned in the Merneptah Stele that was conquered by an Egyptian pharaoh. And of course, after the Bronze Age collapse, the establishment of the Israelite kingdoms uh, were then created. It's possible we do have archaeological evidence of a house of David. Does that mean David was the king of this greater nation to which they claim from the Bible? That part we don't still know. But was at least a house of David that we have found in archaeological evidence. We found archaeological evidence thereof. So the wandering, more than likely a combination of multiple groups who were nomadic during that time frame. But as far as them being the Exodus story and the plagues on Egypt and water coming from rocks and conquering Jericho, we have absolutely no proof of that. If anything, we have proof against the conquering of Jericho in the way that the Bible describes it, because from 1500 BCE to 1000 BCE, there were 0 inhabitants of the city of Jericho. There were no walls in Jericho to collapse. And the Noah story, I mean, the Moses story, and Joshua going in and collapsing those walls, supposedly would have happened in and around, um, in between that time frame, in and around 1300 to 1200 BCE. But if there were no walls, how could the walls have tumbled? So always remember, you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibration.